All right, we got a big game Saturday where Kansas hosts Missouri, Missouri team that I don't really know what to make of. So we had to bring in an expert who should know all things Missouri after what they did to his Pittsburgh Panthers earlier. What, about a week ago at this point? This is Tristan Freeman from Busting Brackets, one of the best in the biz. Tristan, let's just start broadly with, do you think Missouri is a good basketball team, yes or no?
Right now, no. I think that they have been underwhelming, sort of. Like if you want to give them an excuse, they've been injury prone. They've been out with haven't had John Tonji, the Colorado State transfer. Connor Vanover just got back a couple weeks ago, but they're clearly not as good as last year. I mean, not having Kobe Brown, the big man that can do everything for them, was big. The guards, all of them were going like they've definitely downgraded in the backcourt, but there's still some hope. And Dennis Gates has earned my respect from back in his days at Cleveland State and what he did in Missouri. So there's hope for them that if they can get healthy and get some kind of consistent backcourt production, they can be a threat in an SEC that, as even you said before, is a bit, a little bit down overall. They're not that much worse than the teams in the top tier, but they still got a ways to go.
Yeah, the door is open in that conference for sure. And Missouri is a team that had success last season, made the NCAA tournament. And when I step back broadly, like it's weird trying to evaluate some of these rosters in the transfer portal era because there's so much movement in and out, new faces every single year. And I feel like sometimes teams just add like one great player and it makes a lot of sense. Sometimes teams add a bunch of guys and it can work, it can not work. With Missouri, like at a broad level, they have a lot of players that I know can impact a college basketball game positively. Like it has happened for a bunch of different programs. If you go down the list of guys on this team, including Vanover, including Caleb Grill, including Tamar Bates, like there are guys that can play. I don't know if they have a player who should be a number one option on a good team. And to me, this feels like a collection where they're oddly deep with all of these guys. And look, Sean East has been their best player this season. He's scored 21 points or more in back-to-back games now. He has 5 games with 20 points this season. Like he's leading them from a scoring perspective. But to me, both him and Noah Carter feel like guys where it's like, if they're your 4th best player, you feel like your team is awesome. And if they're your 2 best players, I think you're kind of stuck where Missouri is, where you don't really do anything that well, and you're looking for who the other guys are going to be any given night to take you over the hump.
Yeah, and part of the problem is that Sean East becoming a really good scorer for them, averaging around 17 a game. That's good. Like he was a top JUCO transfer that's sort of having that big second-year breakout campaign. But if he's scoring, then what does Tamar Bates do? What does John Tonji do? What does Caleb Grill do? So a lot of those guys are sort of redundant, and none of them are great defensive players. So if you're not having them out for defensive reasons and you don't need their scoring, then what are you doing? And they have a clear top 3. They have 3 guys started all 9 games. Everyone else has been in and out of the lineup. They don't know what to do with Grill. They're having to come off the bench. Does he fit? Like, is there a clear passer? What's the front court looking like? Because Noah Carter is 6'7", and he's their 5 man. Because they haven't had guys who could sort of step up and be their center. And Vanover, we saw this with in Arkansas. He was very limited. He only played around 10 minutes a game in Arkansas. Goes down to Oral Roberts, is great, defensive player of the year and all that. Comes back up and he's still sort of the same guy. Like even when he was against Pittsburgh, he was a negative. And it was when Noah Carter was in the game, that was when they were at their best. And even looking ahead to this matchup, do you really want Vanover going up against Dickinson? You don't want Carter
No.
to. You don't want Carter though, because Carter, if he gets in foul trouble, they're in trouble. And Carter one-on-one can't defend a 7'1" Dickinson. But Vanover is the only guy that can have any kind of hope and potentially to sort of bring him away from the basket to sort of spread the floor. But that's probably the biggest problem Missouri's going to have is who do they have to throw up against Dickinson, or otherwise they're just going to get all their guys in foul trouble.
Yeah, if they try to put Vanover on Dickinson, he's just going to go right through him. Like it is what it is. And I love the idea of Connor Vanover. I always have. I've always thought if he finds the right landing spot, it could work. The truth is the idea of Vanover is just way cooler than the actual Connor Vanover, the player. Like it reminds me of like playing. Do you play NBA 2K at all?
Yes.
NBA 2K My Player mode, the idea of it, I'm always like, that's sick. I'm going to go do that for hours tonight. And then I play like one game as a 55 overall, and I'm just like, this isn't fun. Like, to me, I get that experience watching Vanover. He feels like a My Player, and after 10 minutes, I'm like, yeah, I'm kind of bored with this. So the key to me of beating Kansas, I've said it with every single game they've played this year, and I think there are teams that have done this well against them that has given them chances to win the game. And then there are teams that haven't done it well and they've gotten blown out. I think you have to put Hunter Dickinson in ball screen situations, defending the perimeter over and over and over and over again. Like, I know that's one dimensional. It's a one trick pony, whatever. If you don't have the personnel to do that and do it for 90% of the game, Kansas is going to be impossibly hard to beat. Marquette feasted. They kept getting him out to the perimeter. Tyler Cole, Cam Jones were able to do whatever they wanted. When UConn made the big run, it was Tristan Newton picking Hunter Dickinson apart and either creating a play for someone else or shooting a three if Hunter didn't get out. I don't know that – actually, I do know. I know that Missouri doesn't have the guards capable of doing that. Like, is Tamar Bates going to do this to Hunter Dickinson? Is he going to make Dickinson pay?
No, and a huge key is that you can't really rely on too much of East because they're going to have DeJuan Harris on him all game. And Harris, if he limits him, what are the other guards going to do? Like, if Bates can't give you 10, 15 points, if Grill can't give you 10, 15 points, then they're just not going to have enough offense. You're going to have to find a ways to exploit whenever Nick Timberlake's on the court, whenever Jamari McDowell's on the court. Like, those guys, the 2 through 4 guys, it's going to be so big for Missouri to have any shot in this. You can't rely on East. You can't rely on Carter because they're going to be so busy with their own matchups that, Missouri's potential is that they do have depth. On paper, they have a lot of scoring depth. They just haven't consistently done it so far to make them think that they can be contenders, but this will be a good start time as ever to show that.
Yeah, 100%. It'll be interesting to see how they try to attack Dickinson and put him in space. Kansas, this is a game at home, obviously. They've lost just one game at home each of the last 4 seasons. If you go back 5 years total, they've lost 4 games at home. That's crazy. Obviously, that's good. It speaks to the program. It speaks to how tough they are to beat in this building. If Missouri does the unthinkable and goes on the road and wins this game, what are we going to say in the recap? What do you think the story of the game will be? How did they do it?
That Kansas probably got 20 points combined from everyone not named Dickinson and McCullough. Because that's the flaw of Kansas is what is the supporting cast going to do? Because they're going to go up against a team that can score the ball on them. Do they have enough to score themselves? I don't think that'll be much of an issue because Missouri can't stop Dickinson. But, what is the other guys going to do? What is KJ Adams going to do against an Aiden Shaw? Well, there's going to be time because I'm still not fully a believer on the Jayhawks. I just don't know if this is going to be the team that necessarily exposes them that way.
Makes sense. So now that we're talking through, I do think this could be a more competitive game than people think, because I do think the sum of Missouri's parts is not greater than the sum of Kansas's parts because you include the top 2. But if you go like 3 through 8, I'm taking Missouri's 3 through 8 over Kansas's, I think. Like they have a lot of guys who would be the 4th, 5th best player on this Kansas team right now, like arguably 6 or 7 or 8 guys. And I do think there's a path here. There's a formula here for Missouri to surprise and make this a game. To me, what I would like to see a team do, whether it's Missouri or whether it's someone later on the schedule, I think a team needs to try and take away Kevin McCullough. And that's easier said than done. But I think every single team approaches this Kansas team from a scouting report perspective and says, what are we going to do about Hunter? And look, Hunter's great. Even if you try to take away Hunter, Hunter's going to get his 15 to 20 points every single night. I've seen it. There is not a world where you just completely limit Hunter Dickinson. But I think teams are spending so much time and effort and energy and strategy of, are we doubling? Are we not? Are we throwing different looks at him? That they're just leaving Kevin McCullough in one-on-one situations. And Kevin McCullough's a great player. Don't get me wrong. He's not a top 5 player in the country. Like his numbers show that he has done this season. So I think like weirdly, the formula for Missouri here, they've got a lot of interchangeable bodies that are all big guards that they could throw at Kevin McCullough. And I think if they can find a way to limit him, even if Hunter Dickinson eats, if that means let him go one-on-one with Noah Carter, if that means you dare Hunter Dickinson to beat you and get 50 points in this game, I think you try to do that. And if you can make McCullough have an off night, all of a sudden the rest of Kansas is going to look around and say, what the hell do we do? That's easier said than done. But do you agree that that's a recipe for success potentially?
Yeah, I mean, Kentucky had the game plan. I think we forget that Kentucky did everything they were supposed to do to beat Kansas. DeJuan Harris just happened to make a whole bunch of shots that he literally has not made sense. Like, if DeJuan Harris goes, say, 1 or 2 in a game, that's what he wants to do. He doesn't want to shoot the ball. He wants to pass it. If you get him out of his comfort zone by forcing him to take shots, even if he makes some of them, you will live with that because you can't live with McCullough going for 30 on you and getting in a rhythm. You can't live with Dickinson getting 30 easily. Like, if double those two, make Harris beat you, make Johnny Furphy beat you, make McDowell beat you, make KJ Adams take wide open jumpers. You're not going to win straight up against Kansas outside of a few teams in the country. But you can live with other guys taking a bunch of shots that they don't really want to take and forcing Kansas to adjust in a way. I think, you know, like you said, they have the bodies to throw at McCullough. This might be a game where you just let Dickinson get whatever because you just don't really have a one-on-one matchup. You do have guys, you do have bodies to throw at McCullough. Even if you just want to get in his face and foul him a bunch of times, that's fine too, but do not let him get in a rhythm, especially at home in this environment where it could get ugly if that happens.
Yeah, make no mistake, Hunter Dickinson is good enough to win this game individually. But I think that Kentucky formula is the formula. And it feels like when we talk about Kansas, it's almost like we're trying to crack the code. It's like, we know there's an answer for teams to beat this team. They're too limited in too many spots, but nobody's done it. And it's like an investigation of sorts. And in the Kentucky game, that was McCullough's worst individual game offensively. Look, he had a triple-double. Kevin McCullough's awesome. We know that. But he was 3 for 11 from the floor that game. He finished with only 12 points, and all of them came at the free throw line for the most part. Hunter Dickinson went crazy because Kentucky doesn't have a center, and they dared Hunter Dickinson to beat them. So I think that's what I would do if I was Dennis Gates. But at the end of the day, this is Dennis Gates, not me. This is Dennis Gates versus Bill Self. That would scare me as a Missouri fan. What's your prediction here, Tristan? We just talked at length about how Missouri could potentially do this. What's actually going to happen?
So last year, Missouri was unbeaten, had a little bit of hype on them in Dennis Gates' first years. They played Kansas and got stomped by at least 30, I believe. I think it's going to be a revenge spot for Dennis Gates. I think he has something to prove going up against Bill Self, and I think they will make this a game. It will be competitive with 5 minutes to go, but I think a late run by Dickinson gives Kansas, and I'll predict 85-75.
Okay. Yeah, I'm glad you called out last year's result. It was a 28-point win for Kansas at Missouri. I think ultimately Kansas is too good. I think there's a formula for Missouri, but they're going to need to hit outside shots. They're playing better. I think Pitt's actually good. So I think that road win was impressive. I think Wichita State is like a fine team. I thought Missouri showed a lot, honestly, when they came back against Minnesota. They could have rolled over and died and lost by 20 at the barn. Instead, they kind of grind out a gutsy win. But at their worst, there's a really low floor here, as evidenced by the Jackson State loss. And I think they need to be at their absolute best to have a shot in this game. Anything less than that is a double-digit Kansas win. And I'll roll with that. I think Kansas wins by 15 to 20 points here. So, all right, that's Tristan Freeman from Busting Brackets. I am GregWaddell from Sleepers Media. We're recapping and previewing every single big game of the college basketball season over on the Sleepers Media YouTube channel. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss it all. Thanks, Tristan, for being here, and we'll see you next time.